If you smile at me like that again, I won't be able to pretend you're just my nurse. His hand locked around my wrist. The alarm screamed. Footsteps pounded the hall. Run. That's when I saw them. Men with guns flooding the corridor. Blood on his tattoos that wasn't from surgery. He wasn't my patient, and I just became his only way out. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button for Ebony and Pearl Stories. You won't want to miss what happens next.
That was the moment I realized I had made a terrible mistake. The hospital room was too bright for late afternoon, sunlight filtering through the blinds and bouncing off sterile white walls. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound between us as I checked the 4-drip and glanced at his chart for the third time, mostly to give my hand something to do. I shouldn't have come back. My shift ended 20 minutes ago, but the night nurse called in sick and room 347 needed vitals checked. The room with men in suits standing guard outside. The room everyone avoided. I should have avoided it too. Cha Suk-jin sat on the edge of the hospital bed, shirtless, his injuries wrapped but unmistakable. His torso was a canvas of intricate tattoos, dragons coiling around his ribs, symbols I didn't recognize etched across his shoulders, patterns that didn't look decorative so much as earned. Like warnings carved into skin. "You're healing faster than expected," I said, forcing my professional smile into place, clipboard hugged to my chest like armor. That was when he looked at me. Really looked. Dark eyes. Focused. Heavy with something that made my breath hitch without permission. That smile. His voice was quiet, controlled. "Don't do it again." I laughed awkwardly, trying to break whatever tension was building in the air. "I smile at all my patients, Mr. Cha." His jaw tightened. "I'm not all patients." The heart monitor beeped faster. Mine or his, I couldn't tell anymore. If this story has you hooked already, drop a like and let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you. "Mr. Cha, I need to adjust your pain medication dosage." Suk-jin. I froze, pen hovering over the chart. "What?" "My name. When we're alone, use it." "That's not," I started, but he was standing now. I didn't even see him move. He was in front of me suddenly, close enough that I could smell the antiseptic mixed with something else, cedar and smoke, expensive and completely out of place in a hospital room. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Do you know what you do?" His voice was still quiet, but there was an edge to it now. "When you walk in here with that smile, acting like I'm just another patient." "You are just another patient," I said, but my voice wavered. My back hit the wall. I didn't remember moving backward. The doctors. His hand came up. I thought he was going to touch me, but instead it landed on the wall beside my head. The nurses. The men outside that door. He leaned closer. "Do you know how many of them work for me?" My heart hammered. "Your security team?" "Exactly." His other hand rose, and this time he did touch me, 2 fingers under my chin, tilting my face up until I had no choice but to meet his eyes. "Men who would never dare look at you the way I'm looking at you right now. But you're making it very difficult for them to remember that."
"I'm sorry you whispered."
"I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" His thumb brushed along my jaw, so light it could have been accidental. Except nothing about this man felt accidental. "Didn't mean to walk into my room smiling like you actually care whether I live or die. Didn't mean to make me forget every rule I've set for myself." I couldn't breathe. The room felt smaller, hotter. "What rules?" "The ones that say nurses are off limits. That you're here to do a job, nothing more." He paused, his jaw clenching. "That I don't touch innocent women who don't know what kind of man I really am. I've been a trauma nurse for 6 years. I managed. I know dangerous men when I see them." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. "Then you know," he said slowly, "that the most dangerous ones are the ones who show restraint." Before I could respond, his hand dropped from my chin. But he didn't step back. Didn't create distance. Instead, his fingers wrapped around my wrist. Not hard, not painful. Controlled. Deliberate. If you smile at me like that again, he said, and something lethal crossed his face, I won't be responsible for what line I cross next. My pulse thundered under his fingers. He had to feel it. You're my patient, I reminded him, trying to pull my hand back. He let me go immediately. That, he said quietly, is the only reason I'm still standing on this side of the room. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to unpack. I should go, I whispered.
Yes.
You should. But neither of us moved for 3 heartbeats.
4. 5.
Finally, I grabbed my clipboard and crossed to the door, my legs unsteady. My hand was on the handle when his voice stopped me. Aurelia. I turned. He was still standing where I'd left him, backlit by the afternoon sun, looking like something dangerous dressed in bandages and ink. This isn't over, he said. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I left without responding, but I felt his eyes on me the entire walk down the hallway. And when I finally reached the nurse's station, my hands were shaking as I signed out. What just happened? I'd treated gunshot wounds, stab victims, overdoses. I'd seen violence up close. I knew dangerous men when I saw them. But Cha Suk-jin was different. Because the men in suits outside his door didn't look like family. The way the senior doctors treated him, deferential, careful, didn't match a regular patient. And those tattoos, those scars, the way he moved like violence was second nature. Who are you really? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt his fingers on my chin, heard his warning echoing in my head. If you smile at me like that again. The worst part? A small, reckless part of me wanted to find out what would happen if I did. Thank you for watching. If you're already invested in Aurelia and Suk-jin's story, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories for the next chapter, and drop a comment telling me what time you're watching this. I didn't go back to his room the next day. Instead, I requested assignment to the pediatric wing, telling myself it was about needing a mental break from trauma cases. But the truth sat heavier in my chest. I was avoiding Cha Suk-jin. My apartment was a 30-minute subway ride from the hospital, a tiny studio in Itaewon that cost more than it should but felt like mine. The walls were covered with photos from Chicago. My mom's restaurant, my nursing school graduation, Sophie and me at Navy Pier. Reminders of why I'd come to Seoul in the first place. To start over. To be useful. To save lives without getting attached. That was my rule. The one I'd learned the hard way after losing my father at 12, after watching my mother work herself to exhaustion trying to fill the gap he left. Emotional distance kept you functional. Professional boundaries kept you sane. I'd chosen trauma nursing because it was clean that way. Patients came in broken, you fixed them, they left. No long-term attachments. No chances to lose someone you'd started to care about. But something about the way Suk-jin had looked at me, like he saw past every wall I'd built, made that distance feel impossible. I told myself it was just one uncomfortable encounter. One patient who'd crossed a line. It happens sometimes in hospitals. You moved on. Except I couldn't stop thinking about his warning. If you smile at me like that again. The next morning, I was back on the trauma floor. My supervisor, Nurse Choi, caught me at the nurse's station with a clipboard and an expression I couldn't read. Thomas. Room 347 is being transferred. I looked up from my patient charts. Transferred where? Private wing. She didn't meet my eyes. Orders came from administration. That fast? He's only been here 3 days. That's what happens when certain patients don't want to be seen. She paused, then added quietly, You're being reassigned. Someone else will handle his discharge. Relief and disappointment twisted in my stomach. Understood. But as she walked away, I heard her mutter something under her breath that made my blood run cold. That's what happens when Cha Suk-jin doesn't want complications.
Cha Seok-jin.
The name landed like a punch. I'd never asked his full name. Patient privacy meant I only saw chart numbers and medical codes. But hearing it spoken out loud, the way Nurse Choi said it, with careful neutrality, made something click. I'd heard that name before. I just couldn't remember where. My shift ended at 6, but I stayed late, logging into the hospital's administrative system under the pretense of filing reports. My hands shook as I typed his name into the search bar. The results were sparse. Too sparse. Patient admitted via private ambulance. No insurance information on file. Bills handled by third-party entity. Medical history. Redacted. I switched to my phone, pulling up a regular search engine. The first article made my stomach drop. Cha Suk-jin, the invisible hand behind Seoul's shipping empire. I scrolled. Korean authorities investigate alleged ties between Cha Enterprises and organized crime. Another. Port Authority officials under investigation after Cha Suk-jin testimony leads to deadlock. My hands went numb. I clicked through article after article, each one more disturbing than the last. Shipping companies that moved legitimate cargo, with whispers of something darker underneath. Protection money. Disappearances of rival businessmen. Investigations that went nowhere because witnesses refused to talk. And at the center of it all, Cha Suk-jin. Not a patient. Not some injured businessman who'd ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. A crime boss. The articles never said it outright. They danced around it with words like alleged and suspected, but the pattern was clear. The redacted investigations. The way prosecutors dropped cases. The shipping empire that operated just legally enough to avoid consequences. I thought about the men in suits standing outside his door. The way they watched every move I made, silent and unblinking. The way hospital administrators suddenly expedited his transfer when he made one call. He owns half the city, and I'd smiled at him like he was just another patient. I should have reported it. There were protocols for situations like this. Patients who posed security risks, potential criminal activity in the hospital. But who would I report it to? The administrators who were already moving him to a private wing? The doctors who treated him with careful deference? And what would I even say? That a patient made me uncomfortable? That he'd warned me about my smile? That I'd looked into his eyes and seen something dangerous, but also something that felt like restraint? The worst part was the memory of his fingers on my chin, the way he'd step back when I asked him to, the way he'd let go of my wrist immediately when I pulled away. That's the only reason I'm still standing on this side of the room. He could have crossed that line. Men with his kind of power did it all the time. But he hadn't. And I didn't know what that meant. The hospital felt different after that. I noticed things I'd missed before. The way security personnel nodded respectfully when Suk-jin's men passed through the corridors. The way certain doctors spoke in hushed tones when room 347 came up in morning rounds. The way the private wing, supposedly reserved for wealthy foreign patients, suddenly had 2 additional security stations installed overnight. I saw one of his men in the cafeteria on my lunch break. He was younger than the others, maybe mid-20s, with a scar above his left eyebrow and the kind of stillness that came from violence. He noticed me looking, didn't smile, just gave a small nod, acknowledgement that I was known, recognized. They're watching me. The realization sent ice through my veins. I wasn't just some nurse who'd crossed paths with a powerful patient. I was on their radar now. Noticed. Cataloged. He ran a background check. I remembered suddenly. That's what Suk-jin had said. I noticed people who give a damn. He'd known who I was before I ever walked into his room. By the end of the week, I'd almost convinced myself to forget about it, to treat it like a strange encounter and move on. Cha Suk-jin would be discharged soon, would disappear back into whatever world he came from, and I'd never see him again. But then I got the message. It came through the hospital's internal system, a simple notification that looked official enough. Patient 347, CS requests Nurse A. Thomas for discharge consultation. Private wing, room 12. 1900 hours. My heart stopped. I checked the sender. It came from Dr. Kim's account, but something about the phrasing felt wrong. Too direct. Too specific. I should have ignored it. Should have claimed I never saw the message. Instead, at 7 p.m., I found myself standing outside the private wing's security checkpoint, badge in hand, telling the guard I was expected. He let me through without a word. The private wing was nothing like the rest of the hospital. Soft lighting, expensive art on the walls, carpet instead of linoleum. It looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. Room 12 was at the end of the hall. I stood outside the door for a full minute, hand hovering over the handle, knowing that once I walked through, something would change. He knows I looked him up.
He has to know.
The question was, what happened to people who knew too much about Cha Suk-jin? I thought about the disappeared businessmen, the witnesses who refused to talk, the investigations that went nowhere. Then I thought about the way he'd looked at me, not with entitlement, but with something that felt like a warning.
A choice.
You don't have to walk through that door, a voice in my head whispered. But my hand was already turning the handle. The room was dimmer than the hallway, lit only by the evening sun filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. And there, standing by the window with his back to me, was Cha Suk-jin. He was fully dressed now, dark slacks, black shirt rolled to his elbows, no longer looking anything like a patient. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who owned rooms just by standing in them. He didn't turn around, but his voice cut through the silence. You found out. Not a question. A statement. I swallowed hard. Yes. And you came anyway. My voice faltered. I'm your nurse. You requested. Don't. He turned now, and his eyes were darker than I remembered. Don't pretend this is about nursing. He crossed the room slowly, deliberately, stopping just far enough away that I could still breathe. You know who I am now, he said quietly. You know what I am. So why are you here, Aurelia? The way he said my name like a test, like a dare, made my pulse thunder. I don't know, I whispered. And that, I realized, was the most dangerous truth of all. I don't know, I whispered. The silence stretched between us. Suk-jin's eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. You should, he said finally. Because once we have this conversation, there's no going back to you being just my nurse.
My throat felt dry.
We're already past that. Are we? He tilted his head slightly.
Because you could walk out right now.
Go back to your life. Pretend you never looked me up. Pretend you don't know what I am. Could I? I challenged. Your men already know who I am. They watch me in the cafeteria. They nod at me in hallways. I'm already on someone's list, aren't I? Something dark crossed his expression. Yes. The admission hit harder than I expected. So I never had a choice, I said, anger rising. From the moment you were brought into that ER, I was already, what? Marked? Monitored? Noticed. He said it calmly, like there was a difference. There's a difference, Aurelia. Explain it to me then. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to hold his gaze. Explain why a crime boss gets brought into a public hospital. Why you stayed when you could have been treated anywhere. Why you requested me specifically. You want answers? He moved to the window, putting distance between us.
Fine.
I'll give them to you. He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the Seoul skyline as dusk settled over the city. I was brought to your hospital because it was the closest trauma center after an incident. My men didn't have time to be selective. He turned back to face me. But once I was stable, I could have left. Should have left. Why didn't you? Because of you. My heart stuttered. 3 days before I was admitted, one of my men was treated in your ER. Gunshot wound. Critical condition. His voice was measured, controlled. You spent 2 hours past your shift keeping him alive. You didn't ask questions. Didn't report suspicions. You just did your job. I remembered. Young guy, maybe 25, scared out of his mind despite trying to look tough. When I woke up and saw you, Suk-jin continued, I recognized you from the security footage. And I was curious. Curious, I repeated flatly. About the woman who treated a dying gangster with the same care she'd give anyone else. He moved closer, stopping just outside my personal space. So, yes, I ran a background check. Aurelia Thomas, 26, Trauma nurse. Graduated from University of Illinois. Moved to Seoul 8 months ago after your mother's restaurant burned down in Chicago. My breath caught. How do you? You send her money every month, he continued quietly. $700. More than you can afford on a nurse's salary, which is why you took the night shifts that pay better. You volunteer at a women's shelter on your days off. You have a friend named Sophie who texts you approximately 47 times a day. Horror and violation crashed through me. You had no right. I had every right. His voice sharpened. Anyone who enters my orbit gets vetted. It's how people stay alive in my world. I didn't ask to enter your orbit. No, he agreed. You didn't, which is exactly why I warned you. I stared at him, my mind racing. The smile. That whole speech about rules. Was me giving you a chance to walk away, he said. Before you got curious. Before you started asking questions. Before you ended up exactly where you are right now. Then why did you request me for discharge consultation? My voice rose. Why not just leave and let me forget about you? Because you already looked me up. His jaw tightened. And because the moment you typed my name into that search engine, you put yourself at risk. The room felt smaller suddenly. What kind of risk? The kind where people notice a trauma nurse researching a crime boss from a hospital computer. He moved to a side table, poured himself water from a crystal pitcher that definitely didn't come from hospital supply. The kind where rivals wonder if you're an asset or a liability. My legs felt weak. Your rivals are not known for their restraint. He drank, set the glass down with controlled precision. Which is why I had you brought here. To talk. To make sure you understand what you've walked into. I didn't walk into anything, I said, but my voice shook. I was just doing my job. I know. And for the first time, his expression softened, just slightly. Which is why I'm going to explain something to you, and you're going to listen carefully. I waited. I don't touch innocent people, he said quietly. It's a rule I've lived by since I took over my father's business 12 years ago. I don't involve civilians. I don't use leverage against families. And I definitely don't put nurses at risk because I couldn't control myself for 5 days. Then what was that in the hospital room? I demanded. The warning, the touching, a mistake. The admission seemed to cost him. One I'm correcting right now. Something in my chest twisted. By what? Scaring me away. By being honest with you. He held my gaze. You deserve to know what you're dealing with. Who I am. What associating with me means. And what does it mean? It means that if you walk out of here tonight and never speak to me again, you'll be safe. My men will keep an eye on you, discreetly, until any potential threat passes. Then you'll go back to being just another nurse at Seoul National. And if I don't walk out, his expression darkened. Then you step into a world where I can't protect you the way I'd want to. Where every interaction with me puts a target on your back. Where the kindness that made you stay late to save my men becomes the reason someone might try to hurt you. The weight of his words settled over me like lead. You're trying to push me away, I said slowly. I'm trying to keep you alive, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? I moved closer, surprising myself with my boldness. Because it sounds like you're making my choices for me. Deciding what I can handle. What I deserve to know. You don't understand. Then make me understand. I refuse to back down. Explain to me why a man who claims to have a code, who says he doesn't involve innocent people, looked at me in that hospital room like... I stopped, heat flooding my face. Like what? His voice dropped dangerously low. Like I was something you wanted. I finished quietly. Something you couldn't have. The silence was deafening. Because you are, he finally said, and the rawness in his voice made my breath catch. Both those things. And that's exactly the problem. He turned away, hands clenched at his sides. I've built my entire life on control, Aurelia. On knowing exactly what I want and how to get it without collateral damage. On keeping people separate, business from personal, violence from innocence. He laughed bitterly. And then you walked into my room smiling like the world hasn't broken yet, and every rule I've lived by stopped making sense. My heart pounded. Sukjin. I warned you, he continued, his back still to me. I gave you distance. I tried to do the right thing. But you came back anyway. You looked me up. You walked through that door tonight, knowing what I am. Because I needed to understand, I said. Understand what? Why a man who kills for a living let me go when he could have just taken what he wanted? He turned then, and his eyes were blazing. Is that what you think? That I?
No.
I cut him off. That's the point. You could have. Men with your kind of power do it all the time. But you didn't.
You warned me instead.
You stepped back. You're trying to protect me even now. Because touching you would make you mine, he said roughly. And anything that's mine becomes a weakness someone will try to exploit. Then why tell me all this? I challenged. Why not just disappear? Because he stopped himself, jaw working. Before he could finish, his phone buzzed.
Once. Twice.
3 times in rapid succession. His entire demeanor changed. The vulnerability I'd glimpsed vanished, replaced by cold calculation. He pulled the phone from his pocket, read the screen, and swore in Korean. What is it? I asked, but I already knew. Something was wrong. You need to leave. His voice was flat, controlled.
Right now.
Sukjin. My building just went into lockdown. He was already moving, grabbing a jacket from the chair, checking something I couldn't see. Someone breached the ground floor security. Ice flooded my veins. Who? Rival family. He pulled a gun from somewhere I didn't even see where he'd hidden it. They've been watching this hospital, waiting for me to be vulnerable. Oh my God. This is what I meant, he said, and his eyes met mine with devastating clarity. This is why you can't be near me. Because this, he gestured to the phone, the gun, the sudden shift from man to predator. This is what my life looks like. The lights in the hallway flickered once, went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Sukjin moved to the door, his entire body coiled with lethal focus. Stay behind me. When I tell you to run, you run. Understand? I'm not leaving you. Aurelia. He looked back at me, and for one heartbeat I saw fear. Not for himself. For me. If something happens to you because of me, I will never forgive myself. So please, for once, just do what I say. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not the measured walk of security. Something faster. More purposeful. Sukjin's hand tightened on the gun. And I realized with terrifying clarity, this was no longer about warnings or boundaries or rules neither of us wanted to follow. This was about survival. Don't go anywhere. Drop a comment if you think they'll make it out alive. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Sukjin moved with lethal precision, positioning himself between me and whoever was about to enter. His body was coiled, controlled, every muscle ready for violence. The door handle turned. I held my breath. Boss. A man stepped through, one of Sukjin's, the one with the scar above his eyebrow I'd seen in the cafeteria. Ground floor is compromised. They're sweeping up. Sukjin's jaw tightened. How many? 8 that we've counted. Maybe more in the parking structure. The man's eyes flicked to me briefly. Sir, the nurse. Is my priority. Sukjin cut him off. Get her out. Back exit. Through the surgical wing. 2 men with her at all times. Wait. I started, but Sukjin turned to me with an expression that made my protest die in my throat. This is not a discussion, Aurelia. All due respect, boss, the scarred man said carefully. Back exits already watched. They knew you'd try to move her. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. They know about me, I whispered. Sukjin's silence was answer enough. How long have they known? I demanded, anger cutting through my fear. Since you walked into my room 5 days ago, he said flatly. Since you smiled at me and every camera in that hallway captured it. since my enemy started asking why Cha Suk-jin was interested in a trauma nurse. The room tilted. You knew. This whole time. I knew they were watching. His voice was hard now, the softness from earlier completely gone. I didn't know they'd be stupid enough to move this fast. Another buzz from his phone. He glanced at it, swore viciously in Korean. They're on the 3rd floor, the scarred man reported, listening to something through his earpiece. Moving toward the private wing. Then we go up, Suk-jin decided. Helipad. I have a bird on standby. You have a helicopter? I couldn't believe we were having this conversation. You think I don't plan for contingencies? He moved to the door, checked the hallway with practiced efficiency. Minyoon, take Pwing. I'll cover her. Minjun, the scarred man, nodded and slipped into the corridor. Suk-jin turned back to me, and for one moment, his mask cracked.
I'm sorry.
For all of this. For dragging you into. Save it. I cut him off, surprising myself. Just get us out alive. You can apologize later. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe respect. Stay close to me. Don't stop moving. If I tell you to run, you run. Understand? I nodded. He took my hand, not gently, not romantically, but with the firm grip of someone who wasn't going to let go, and pulled me into the hallway. The private wing was eerily quiet under emergency lighting. Our footsteps echoed too loud against marble floors. Every shadow felt like a threat. Min-jun moved ahead of us, gun drawn, checking corners with military precision. 2 more of Suk-jin's men appeared from a side corridor, falling into formation around us. Stairwells clear to the 5th floor. One of them reported. After that, we don't know. Then we move fast, Suk-jin said. Radio silence unless absolutely necessary. They're listening. We reached the stairwell. The door was already propped open. Someone had been through here recently. Suk-jin's hand tightened on his gun. Could be ours. Could be theirs. Stay behind me. We started climbing. 3rd floor. 4th floor. My lungs burned. My legs screamed, but I kept moving because stopping wasn't an option. Between the 5th and 6th floors, Min-jun held up a fist. Everyone froze. Voices drifted down from above. Korean, fast and clipped. Not Suk-jin's men. 3 of them, Min-jun whispered, blocking the roof access. Can we go around? I asked quietly. Not without going back down, Suk-jin said. Which means running straight into whoever's behind us. So we're trapped? I breathed.
No.
His eyes met mine, dark and deadly. We go through. Before I could process what that meant, he was moving. Min-jun and the others followed, and suddenly the stairwell erupted into chaos. Gunshots, deafening in the enclosed space. Shouting. The metallic smell of blood. I pressed myself against the wall, hands over my ears. Watching Suk-jin move like violence was a language he spoke fluently. It was over in less than 30 seconds. 3 men down. None of them were Suk-jin's. Go, he commanded, and we were running again, stepping over bodies I tried not to look at, climbing toward the roof access. This was real. This was his world. Not corporate meetings and shipping manifests, blood and bullets and choices measured in seconds. We burst through the roof door into cold night air. The helicopter was exactly where he said it would be, rotors already spinning, pilot visible in the cockpit. Get her on, Suk-jin ordered. But I didn't move toward the helicopter. Instead, I turned back to the door we'd just come through. They're coming, I said, because I could hear them. More footsteps, more voices, an army of men who wanted Suk-jin dead. I know, he said calmly, which is why you need to get on that helicopter right now. What about you? I'll hold them here until you're clear then.
No.
The word came out fierce, surprising us both. Aurelia. I said no. I grabbed his arm, the one not holding a gun. You don't get to sacrifice yourself after dragging me into this. You don't get to protect me and then die on this roof. This isn't your choice. The hell it isn't. I was yelling now, over the helicopter noise. over the sound of footsteps getting closer. You said I was your priority. You said you'd get me out. So get us both out. Something in his expression cracked. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. I held his gaze. I understand that if you stay here, you die. And I understand that I'm not leaving without you. Boss. Minjun shouted from the helicopter. We're out of time. The door to the stairwell burst open. Men poured through, too many to count, too many to fight. Sukjin made a decision. He grabbed me and ran. We dove into the helicopter as bullets pinged off metal. Minjun returned fire from the open door as the pilot pulled up, the ground falling away beneath us with terrifying speed. I was thrown against Sukjin's chest as the helicopter banked hard. His arm wrapped around me, holding me steady as Seoul's lights blurred below. We were alive. We'd made it. The helicopter flew for maybe 10 minutes before landing on top of a building I didn't recognize. Sleek, modern, expensive, definitely not a hospital. Where are we? I asked as Sukjin helped me out.
My building, he said.
The one place they can't reach without starting a war neither side wants. His building. His territory. His world. I'd stepped into it completely now. We took a private elevator down, Sukjin still holding my arm like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. His men peeled off at different floors until it was just the two of us, descending into silence. When the doors opened, we stepped into a penthouse that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Art that was definitely real. Space that spoke of wealth I couldn't even imagine. But I barely noticed any of it because Sukjin had turned to face me, and his expression was devastated. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. Done what? Refused to leave. He ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of lost composure I'd seen. You should have gotten on that helicopter and let me handle it. You would have died. Maybe. He met my eyes. But you would have been safe. And that's supposed to be worth it? I demanded. You dying so I can go back to my normal life and pretend none of this happened? Yes. The word hit like a physical blow. You don't get it, Aurelia. He moved closer, and I saw something like desperation in his eyes. You're a weakness now. My enemies know I care whether you live or die. They'll use that. They'll hurt you to hurt me. Then teach me, I said. Teach me how to survive in your world. I don't want you to have to survive in my world. His voice broke slightly. I wanted you to stay clean. Stay separate. Stay human. I finished softly. While you do all the dirty work alone? He didn't answer. Here's what I don't understand. I continued. You have money, power, an entire organization. You could have any protection you wanted, but you were willing to die on that roof to buy me 30 seconds. Why? Because keeping you safe means keeping you innocent, he said. And I failed. The moment you stepped into my world tonight, I failed. I moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of choices he'd been carrying alone. Maybe I don't want to be kept innocent, I said quietly. Maybe I want to make my own choices about what I can handle. You don't know what you're saying. I watched you kill 3 men tonight, I interrupted. I got on a helicopter while people shot at us. I'm standing in your penthouse, in your world, fully aware of what you are. And I'm still here. His jaw worked. Why? The question hung between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Because, I said carefully, somewhere between that hospital room and this moment, I stopped seeing you as just a patient, or just a criminal. I started seeing you. The silence was deafening. I don't know how to protect you, he finally admitted, and the rawness in his voice made my chest ache. I don't know how to keep you safe and keep you in my life. I don't know. Then we figured out, I said. Together. Aurelia. I'm not leaving, Sukjin. I held his gaze. I'm not walking away. I'm not pretending this didn't happen. So you either accept that, or you physically throw me out. Those are your options. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. "You're insane," he said quietly. "Probably. This is the worst decision you could make. I know. My world is violent, dangerous. There's no guarantee. I know," I repeated. "I know all of it. And I'm still here." His hand came up, cupping my face the way he had in the hospital room, but different now. Not a warning. A claim. "If you stay," he said softly, "everything changes. There's no going back to who you were." My heart pounded. Then I guess I'm not going back. For the first time since I'd met him, Cha Suk-jin smiled. Not the dangerous smile. Not the controlled one. Something real. "God help us both," he murmured. And then he kissed me. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was the culmination of 5 days of restraint, of warnings neither of us had heeded, of a line we'd been circling since the moment he first said my name. His hand cupped my face, the other sliding to my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. We were standing in his penthouse. People had just tried to kill us. My entire life had shifted in the span of 2 hours. And I'd just kissed a crime boss. "We should talk," Suk-jin said quietly, his forehead still resting against mine. "I know. I need you to understand exactly what you're agreeing to." I stepped back, putting enough distance between us to think clearly. "Then tell me." He moved to the windows, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. The city he controlled, the city that controlled him. "My life is structured," he began, his voice measured. "Meetings, territory disputes, alliances that shift like sand. I have enemies who would kill me if they could, rivals who test boundaries, law enforcement that watches everything I do. I know. You don't." He turned to face me. "You know the surface. The violence you saw tonight was nothing compared to what my world really looks like. People disappear. Families get targeted. Anyone close to me becomes a weapon someone can use against me." The weight of his words settled heavy in my chest. "If you stay," he continued, "there are rules. You don't go anywhere alone. You don't trust anyone I haven't vetted. You accept that men with guns will follow you everywhere. Not because I don't trust you, but because I can't risk losing you." "That's not a life," I said quietly. "That's a cage." "Yes." He didn't sugarcoat it. "It is. Which is why I'm giving you one last chance to walk away. And if I don't, then you're mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it sent heat through my veins. Completely. Not just in public, not just when it's convenient. You become part of my world, and everyone who wants to hurt me will know exactly how to do it, by hurting you. I sat on the edge of his designer couch, exhaustion finally catching up with me. My scrubs were wrinkled, probably had blood on them I didn't want to examine too closely. My hands shook slightly, adrenaline crash. "I need you to be honest with me," I said. "Not as the man who runs half the city. As Suk-jin, the person behind all the control." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat beside me, close but not touching. "My father built this empire," he said quietly. "Legitimate businesses used to hide illegitimate ones. He was ruthless, efficient, and he taught me that the moment you show weakness, you die. That's why you never get attached. That's why I didn't get attached." He looked at me. "Until you." My breath caught. "I've had relationships," he continued. "Women who understood the arrangement. Who wanted the lifestyle, the money, the protection. Women who knew it was transactional. But I'm not like them."
"No."
His hand found mine. "You smiled at me like I was human. You fought to keep my men alive. You refused to leave me on that roof, even when staying put you in danger." His grip tightened. "You made me want something I swore I'd never want. Someone who matters more than control." Tears pricked my eyes. "That terrifies you." "It should terrify you," he countered. "Because I will never be safe, Aurelia. There will always be another rival, another threat, another night like tonight. I can't promise you peace. I can't promise you normal. What can you promise? That I will protect you with everything I have. His voice was fierce now. That anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to me. That I will build walls around you so high that touching you becomes a death sentence. That's not love, I whispered. That's obsession. In my world, they're the same thing. The honesty in his voice was brutal.
No romantic illusions.
No promises of changing for me, just the raw truth of what loving him meant. I thought about my mother back in Chicago, rebuilding her restaurant with the money I sent. About Sophie, probably panicking because I hadn't texted in hours. About the life I'd built, small, safe, uncomplicated. Then I thought about Sukjin's hand on my chin, his warning, the way he'd positioned himself between me and danger without hesitation. I need to ask you something, I said. He waited. When you warned me in that hospital room about my smile, were you trying to scare me away? Yes. Why didn't it work? He was quiet for a moment. Because you're not easily scared. Because you saw through the warning to what I was really saying. Which was? That I wanted you, he said quietly. And that wanting you made you dangerous to yourself. I turned to face him fully. Here's what I need you to understand, Sukjin. I didn't choose your world. I didn't choose the violence or the danger or the men with guns. His expression shuddered. Then, I chose you, I interrupted. The man who could have taken what he wanted but warned me instead. The man who tried to protect me even when it cost him. The man who's been carrying the weight of an empire alone because he thinks that's what strength looks like. Aurelia. I'm not asking for safe. I continued. I'm not asking for normal. I'm asking if you can accept that I'm making this choice with my eyes open. That I know exactly what your world looks like, and I'm choosing to stand in it anyway. For the first time since I'd met him, Cha Suk-jin looked uncertain. You say I'm your weakness, I said softly. But maybe I'm also your strength. Maybe having someone who knows all of it, the violence, the control, the weight, and stays anyway. Maybe that's not weakness. Maybe that's the only real power you've never had. Something in his expression cracked open. You don't know what you're asking for, he said, but his voice was rough now, unsteady. Then show me. I moved closer. Stop trying to protect me from your world, and let me into it. All of it. The darkness, the danger, the parts you think will break me. What if it does? What if it doesn't? He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, his hand came up to cup my face again. The same gesture from the hospital room, but different now. Not a warning. A promise. If you smile at me like that again, he murmured, echoing his words from 5 days ago. What? I whispered, my heart pounding. What happens? I won't let you go, he finished. Not to rivals, not to danger, not to anything that tries to take you from me. You'll be mine, Aurelia.
Completely.
Are you ready for that? I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The hospital room, the research, the rooftop, the choice that had seemed impossible, but now felt inevitable. Then I smiled. The real smile. The one that had started all of this. I'm ready, I said. And this time, when he kissed me, it wasn't desperate or restrained. It was a claim, a promise, the beginning of something that would probably destroy us both, or forge us into something unbreakable. When we finally pulled apart, his eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them. Tomorrow, he said, we deal with the fallout. My organization needs to know you're protected. The hospital needs a story about why you disappeared. Your family needs. Tomorrow, I agreed. But tonight, he said quietly, we pretend the world doesn't exist outside these walls. It was a lie, of course. His world existed in every corner, every shadow, every decision we'd have to make going forward. But for a few hours, we let ourselves believe it. 3 days later, I stood in Suk-jin's office watching him work. The penthouse had a separate wing for business, soundproofed rooms, encrypted phones, men in suits who came and went with news I was only beginning to understand. The hospital had accepted my resignation. A generous severance package had been arranged, Sukjin's doing, though he'd never admit it. My mother received an anonymous donation that would keep her restaurant running for years. Sophie got a carefully worded message about me pursuing a private nursing position. All the loose ends tied up neatly, all the bridges quietly burned. Second thoughts. Sukjin asked without looking up from his papers. Every day, I admitted. But I'm still here. He set down his pen, finally meeting my eyes. The Kim family is moving against us. They blame me for what happened at the hospital. They think taking you will make you weak, I finished. I know. Minjun already briefed me. And I understand the risk. He stood, moving around the desk until he was in front of me. This is what I meant. This. He gestured to the